Alrighty, hopefully we're recording. I'm over at the old man's house, and he showed me how to work this stuff, so hopefully I got it right. He doesn't really want to be a part of this, and actually I don't really want to either. I got to put this someplace else. I got the little music box with the... Can't quite see that. Anyway, I was looking for the song. Yeah, I was trying to find the song. We'll get to that in a minute. The song, the clue. Anyway, so this recording is meant to address two different groups of people. You guys from outside the valley, over there, or down there, or up there, someplace. And it took a while. Well, first of all, we don't really have any idea how long you guys have been transmitting on shortwave. But we had somebody that emerged from their hiding place. And it took weeks before finally they said, oh yeah, I got a shortwave radio. I listen to it every night. You don't think that that's important information. So that was sort of like the big joke for a while. But anyway, so among other things, we deduced that the particular format of your little daily shows, that it was local. Interesting thing, the signal strength was changing. It seemed like it was different every night, so we figured we'll probably have the same problem that they had up in Northern California, or at least you're trying to avoid it, that anybody that was transmitting up in, well, Central California in particular, they basically would, as soon as we can tell the reports that we have, that they would bomb their location. So that makes sense that even though things aren't that bad down here, that you would probably want to try to avoid that, so that makes sense. But anyway, so from what we understand about your transmissions, we have an invite, and so we all sat around, the few of us that are now a little tiny community, and some of us were opposed to the idea, myself included, just because of some issues that I'll get to in a minute, but there's going to be 3 people going up day after tomorrow. And it'll probably take about 2 days to get there because we're kind of overly cautious, and we have to have, well, there's some logistical issues with getting there. Anyway, the other group, I'm kind of rambling. I got to just get through this because this whole thing is really, well, it's kind of stupid. But the other one is that this whole idea kicking around the idea of some kind of time capsule for future generations. Because we've made it this far, so the idea is that there'll be somebody in the future that'll want to know what really happened, at least from our perspective. And I think that that's really stupid, and I'll get to that. And the thing is that just deciding who's going to do this, it was a pretty easy decision. The ex-government guy is the likely choice by virtue of the fact that he's such a good orator, but the thing is that he even himself admits that he's typically seeing the future, like, this is what our little community could become, and we went through all these really hard times, and just, it's like he's, it's as if he's basically addressing an auditorium full of people who just probably really aren't really interested, and he's trying to get them interested, you know. And there's a couple other people that were possible choices who we kind of felt that they would be too much of this. It was so hard, and it was hard, and I guess the thesis statement about that is that all of us, everybody we ever knew is dead. And if they're not dead, they're as good as dead. We'll never see them again. That's probably the hardest part. So, having said that, we don't have to talk about that. So yeah, of course, it's been difficult. But that's not really what people from the future are going to want to hear. That's a sort of a given. And quite honestly, this is a pretty big valley, and we have our little tiny place we're going to put this thing, which is obviously, you know, marked as what it is. And if people are like going through here, well, listen, bottom line, more than likely if somebody finds it, they're going to throw it away because of who would probably find it. And more than likely, our valley, as far as anybody's commentary on it, is going to be, it won't even warrant a paragraph in a Chinese high school textbook, and that's probably the only place it's going to show up. and I don't think they're historians. You know, the winners don't really care. History's already written. These guys plan years, if not, well, they plan years in advance. They know what they're going to do. We don't know. So anyway, I guess let's see. Let's take care of the business end of things first. This is going to be like one of those one-shot things. If I screw up, I screw up. I'm only going to do this once. I got other things I want to do. In other words, we're all in agreement. This is probably just some little stupid thing we're going to do, and just we're going to get it done. Well, the other thing is, the reason why we need to do this for you guys, obviously we're going to be up there, and if everything goes off correctly, it's like they're going to tell you everything I'm telling you. It'll be like, yeah, like he said. If not, then let's say, for instance, if we don't make it, but you find us at a later date, you can remove this from a dead body, one of the three guys. It'll be taped to him. Of course, if you're seeing this, you already know that, and it's like you'll see him remove it from, you know. Anyway, so we're just kind of covering the bases. We're really security-minded down here, so no names, no specific locations, and we definitely aren't going to put anything on here that would suggest exactly where we're going. But so let's take care of the business thing first, and we'll take care of your messages, which is really, I guess, the fun part of this. But anyway, so oh yeah, if you're hearing something besides the music box, it's already really hot already. And so where to begin? So down here, everything is from the big flash in the sky to probably 2 weeks afterwards is known as collectively the event. And the reason why it's known as that is because you just get so tired of hearing about remember this and remember that. Look, it's the event, and I remember it, and I don't want to hear about it again. Moving on. But anyway, so everybody saw it who lives in California and probably parts of Nevada and Arizona, which was the big light show in the sky, which coincided with the lights going out. And we don't know who did it. And the working theories as far as origination logistically would be a ship out in the Pacific, an airplane out in the Pacific, a launch from someplace, but not from here, not from the United States, and or a satellite. And it seems like the satellite version wins. And of course, the likely candidate would be North Korea. Hold on for a second. I can't think with this going. And I can't hardly see without my glasses. I was trying to find the song, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, so where was I? Oh yeah. So anyway, so pretty much the feeling down here from everybody in my neighborhood was that the lights would come back on. For those of us that actually knew what it was, we pretty much figured that it was not. But we didn't really know how widespread it was. And so come to find out, the origination, nobody really had the presence of mind to go, okay, well, the sun is here and going down, and the flash is over here, and it's, okay, and, you know, the angles and all that kind of stuff. It was at past sundown, so otherwise we probably wouldn't have even seen it. So in other words, we can't really get an angle on it. If we get an angle, then we could get concentric circles for a radius, and that would be a real clue as far as how bad things were and what was affected. Because its angle on the horizon, you could, if you had enough topographical information, you could determine where the edge of the line of sight is and what areas were affected. But because it was so low on the horizon, we figured that those of us that knew what it was, few and far between, was that it was probably most of California and a little bit of Nevada and a little bit of Arizona and a little bit of Mexico. And so far, by all indications, that's pretty accurate. So nothing really happened for about 3 days. It was a part of 3 days, and early in the morning, beginning of day 3, it was the rude awakening of the roar of jets and massive bombs going off in multiple locations. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, it's coming from over there. It was basically almost like from everywhere simultaneously. And basically what that was, and the thing is, we're figuring that was Chinese, and we don't have any reason to believe that it was not. And so they took out all 3 airports, and which is an interesting thing, because there's people like going, when we're collecting all this information as time goes on, there's 3 airports? Yeah, there's a little tiny one that most people don't even know exists. It's a little tiny. I mean, you can take off just about any kind of military jet from there, which is probably why that was taken out. And in addition to that, every highway in and out of the valley was bombed. And there's people that are like, well, after the fact, people talking about it, the few of us that there are in our little neighborhood. Why? And one person in particular, it doesn't make any sense. It makes total sense. And that is that there's no place to land a jet, and there's no access for trucks and heavy equipment to get in. And so it's helicopters in and out, and we haven't seen any of those, not a one. And airlifts, stuff getting dropped by parachutes, 0. And so then, okay, that brings us up to day 3, and then day 4 was the other rude awakening, which was 3 tactical nukes over the hill. And the information on that's pretty sketchy, but as near as we can figure from the few refugees that were passing through, and we are really unfriendly to people passing through, but from time to time we'll get a little short conversation going, because our feeling is that there's nothing here for you, and this is our neighborhood, and just keep going, there's a whole story behind that, but the whole point is that as near as we can tell, they were taking out Long Beach, and not all of Long Beach, the harbor, and San Pedro, and there probably was some heavy industry kind of thing going on down there. Oh, that's right. LAX didn't warrant a nuke, but that was like carpet bombed with our estimation probably 500-pound, not laser guided. You didn't need it. The target's too big, and you got to have somebody on the ground anyway. So we've gone around this round and round and round, and the thing is that because we ended up listening to shortwave kind of late in the game, that nobody's talking about it anymore. It's kind of like over here in the United States, where it's like once the Gulf Wars got going, the different times that they did, you'd hear little stuff here and there. You just hear like little snippets, but you didn't really hear a lot of specifics, like they bombed the hell out of this position on the map, and this is what they took out. So basically, we kind of have to sort of piece it together. And so as far as anything for history goes, it's like we don't really know anything specifically, except for the fact that what they did to the valley, we know that firsthand, and we definitely saw the flashes and heard and felt 3 tactical nukes. And we're just calling that because we really don't know the size of them, but the speculation is that it was Hiroshima and below. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. I probably should have written notes, but it's like, again, this is just to kind of mark it off my list of things to do. I gotta cut off all my hair today because it's too hot, and I have to get back to work on some water storage project thing. Anyway, so okay, you guys, let's see. Oh, did I leave anything out? I think that pretty much brings us up to speed. We've had a few encounters with military, and we've heard the rumor that there's going to be more of a presence down here, not because they're retreating, but I guess from the geopolitical standpoint, obviously, we already heard from your transmissions. That's one of the things that's screwing this up. We should have done this as 2 separate projects. So telling you some stuff that you already know, obviously, Lancaster, because of the facilities up there, obviously there was some nukes going off up there, and we saw it and didn't really hear much, but we figured that those were probably smaller than what we had down here in LA. And obviously Russia's controlling everything east of the Rockies, and we can't really talk too much about that because there's no information coming out of there on shortwave. And from around the world, again, it's basically somebody else's nightly news in another country where it's like they're already over it, okay? The United States is no more, and there's an occupied territory by Russia, and there's an occupied territory by China. And that's not really, there's other things going on. So, but anyway, so, but what we're gathering from, well, one person in particular, which we haven't seen since, it was an interesting conversation in that he's definitely military, and he's claiming to be sort of lower management, and they get this cell thing going so that if somebody's captured, they don't really know much of anything. They'll end up dead, and they don't have any information to divulge except for the fact that they received by radio their encrypted instructions, which they got their one and only playbook for that. And so from time to time, somebody who with an awful lot of forethought basically has mapped out what they need to do. They just need to tell them when to do it. And so they go and do something that they've never done before, and like magic, something blows up. So occasionally he's saying they actually have to do something where they have to put something in some crosshairs, and they do a few of those, but those are few and far between. Mostly they're embedded. And but so the word out of Central California is that the Chinese have actually been, they're the bad guys, but in the sense that if Russia had taken over everything, they're thinking that this was, they think that what they're doing is really kinder and gentler. And I would tend to disagree by virtue of the fact that, well, assuming that they didn't do the EMP thing, because basically once you do that, if you don't put everything back together, then 90-something% of everybody's dead a lot quicker than everybody thought. So anyway, let's see, where the hell was I? Oh yeah, so basically their solution to managing the people that are left over, and by the way, their presence was pretty much instantaneous, so the thinking there is basically that there was probably people embedded already, and this is, they kind of knew something was going to happen, they probably didn't know when, and maybe they were intending on pulling the trigger, but it looks like somebody did it for them. North Korea is toast, and so China rules really, in a sense, half the world, and Russia rules the other half. Even though they haven't invaded everybody, it's like they've basically become the two USs that are going around calling the shots. So their thing is that, look, if you want to leave, go ahead and leave. And so they put up this sort of border of sorts. Some places have fences, some people have guards, have people patrolling, and they've told everybody, this is where it is. You can go below this point right here, but you can never come back in. If you stay here, we tell you where you're working, what you're doing, and it's primarily agriculture. And so they're taking care of some of the bigger logistical issues. So over there's airdrops and things like that, and there's patrols and stuff like that. And when places get out of hand, they just basically withhold water, and obviously a lot of people have died. And this is a really simplistic overview. I'm sure that there's much more to it than that, but this is like one fairly quick conversation. By the way, I sort of left one thought hanging, and that is he's claiming to be lower management, and there's indications that he was lying. So we think that he's actually pretty far up, and that he really knew too much. And when he was saying he was speculating, we think it's probably the real deal. We have confirmation from a couple radio sources that everything that we could verify was dead on, so it wasn't like he was just making up a story, but he knew too much to be in a cell. So, and we think that his lies were so transparent that basically he wanted plausible deniability, but he wanted to basically pass along as much information as possible, knowing that he was never planning on seeing any of us again. Anyway, so let's see, I think that covers it. Oh yeah, so if you want to get into Central Valley, you can do that, but you actually, it's like entering a country. And if you leave, they've already taken information and pictures and biometrics and fingerprints and crap like that. They don't let you back in. In other words, once you're gone, you're gone. And if they catch you trying to come back in, they say, and we're kind of figuring it's probably true, that they just shoot you on the spot. They're not messing around. It's a full-on military occupation, and so in light of the fact that there's a way out, that totally makes sense. But there was an awful lot of carnage getting up to the point where they actually had things under control, and so by virtue of the fact that they're actually dealing with them almost like, I mean, they got radios up there, so on broadcast radio they're bringing everybody up to speed. It's like, yeah, you want to have guns, you want to shoot each other, that's fine. Most of what they're doing is by remote. They got drones all over the place. Their patrols are like heavily armed. The very few times that people have tried to attack them, it's been basically a fool's errand, and people end up dead. And rumor has it that the patrols were remote also, just basically testing. It's like, in other words, you can fly a drone everywhere. You can drive a drone everywhere. So that was one of the breadcrumbs that this guy was saying, is a matter of speculation that he had heard, that their patrols were basically remote, and so the losses on the Chinese side are probably zero, and the losses on our side, almost everybody was dead soon after the lights went out, and beyond that, people try to attack the faceless enemy, and they get blown off the map. And as far as refugees, we understand from your transmissions that you have a couple of people that decided to leave, and they made it all the way down here, and so that was useful information. So, and everything else beyond that would be even more speculation. So, and we'd be telling you stuff that you know already. Your intel seems to be every bit as good as ours, except for information that we gleaned from this one individual, which we're not going to put any more on here, because some of it is actually sensitive information, so you'll probably be hearing that firsthand once we check you out and you check us out. But anyway, so getting back to your cryptic nightly messages, it was really interesting because we almost skipped over your stuff entirely because it was so bizarre and not useful, because we're hearing a weather report, and we're hearing like stupid little current events like the latest little get-together without really any details, and some information that was discussed that was used in terminology that seemed to be too textbooky and not specific. And so we're like going, these are messages. So anyway, so we finally kind of figured out that it was something local, and so not to take up the space for all of that, because the guys going up there will tell you about that. But so it was the crossword puzzle, which we ended up hearing, well, a total of 3 times. I guess we'll probably hear it again coming up here pretty quick. But so the first time we're just trying to figure it out. Obviously, because it's a little kid, we thought that was great, or it sounds like a little kid. I'm thinking of a word there, and it's in my crossword puzzle, and I'm thinking that the word probably starts with the letter P, and it has 5 letters, and it's a word for, and it was something that some kid would never, I mean, some of the words you wouldn't expect a kid to be able to read, and technical. And so we're like kind of going, okay, well, I mean, at first it could be the kid's got a crossword puzzle. The thing is, we're never going to actually mesh everything together. That's not going to happen. So we're actually figuring out, well, okay, there'll be a word. It starts with this, and you list every word you can think of that starts with this that has anything remotely to do with what the definition is. And so you end up with all these lists of words, and we're very good to keep them in order, and we got like these papers all laid out, and we're all like sitting around trying to figure this out. And we're finding that, well, most of these are like locations, and so we got a bunch of nouns and we got a bunch of verbs, and so 2 things had to be figured out before we could really piece it together, because we understood what the locations were because somebody from down here used to live up there, and there's a couple of us that have some familiarity with the area anyway, but not to the level of this person. So anyway, so we're like going, okay, we got a basic idea of where this is, and so our first problem is that when the kid starts with the first word, we think that's the beginning of the message, and come to find out, we thought, well, maybe it's a circle, and where along the circle does it actually start? we found out that it does not start where the kid starts. That's not the beginning, that's not the end, that's just someplace in the middle. So once we figured that out, that was very helpful. So now it's like we know we're going someplace and we have a pretty good idea of where we're going. We just don't know when we're supposed to be there. That's why I was looking for the song, because I think the clue was something like, I don't know, because I don't have it here, that's someplace else. I'm in a mood, and I'm feeling blue. I'm in a mood and I'm feeling blue. What time of what day is it? And it's Moody Blues, Tuesday afternoon. So Tuesday afternoon's coming up, and we don't want to miss another one because we've missed two. And so we'll find out what you guys are all about. Our expectation is that they'll show up. They're going to be wearing the right stuff. They'll be hopefully at the right location. It'll be just after lunchtime, because nobody wants to be out after dark. We're assuming that it's going to be a really short get-together initially, and maybe our guys will be invited back the next day, or maybe not, because that's how we would do it. And there's probably going to be, they might be offered a place to stay. They're going to decline, because if it's anything like it is down here, once somebody walks into our area, the eyes are on them continually. So we'll figure we're going to be watched by everybody, and we don't particularly like the idea of being in a fishbowl, even if it's for a good reason. So anyway, I guess that probably pretty much covers it. I guess on a more, how can I put it, personal note, we're actually only for about the last 2 months have had any sort of feeling of community amongst the very few people on the block I'm on, and one on either side. That's largely due to the guy who wasn't going to get to do this because of the fact that he wouldn't get the straight story. He's very forward-thinking, and so he's thinking that our chances of survival are better in a larger group of people that are on the same page. And it's just a matter of expanding our circle of friends. That's one of the reasons why people want to do this. I wouldn't do it right now. My problem, and really all of our problems is that we're running out of stored food. And obviously we found out something that, well, Farm Boy from Idaho, who's basically leading the group up there, has been a really good resource, because there's a real shortcutting to finding out what kind of naturally occurring foliage we could eat. And come to find out, there's only 1 or 2 weeds that you wouldn't want to eat. We wouldn't want to eat any of them. But so dandelions are going to be a really good crop coming up here. And so we're actually actively pursuing growing dandelions. And already had photai, which is a story in and of itself, because it grows like a weed and you can eat the leaves, but you don't want to eat too many because the oxalic acid, something like that. Anyway, there's a whole list of, he's got a whole list of information. He's even got some samples, and he's got pictures and stuff like that. And the thing is that as far as the way things work in our little community, this sort of goes against the grain too, because when people come through, we don't give them anything. We just tell them to get the hell out of there, because they're kind of doing what we're doing. We're scavenger hunting, but we don't scavenger hunt in neighborhoods. We scavenger hunt in industrial areas or in shopping malls or something like that, places where people probably wouldn't go to live, and we're extremely cautious, and we run into people that are already there, we move on. Okay, we basically keep to ourselves, and nobody gets hurt. And and basically people have had enough of that. I myself was very fortunate because I spent a month in my attic. There's a whole story in regard to that, but things got really dicey after only like 2 weeks. It basically was statistically the hockey stick thing. All of a sudden, it's like gunshots and carnage and all kinds of crap. So at the first hint of that, I moved a bunch of stuff up into the attic, and it was kind of in a hurry. And I think I didn't sleep for like 3 days. And I ended up there, and my house did get broken into during that first month. And as a matter of fact, once that happened, luckily they moved on. And not to go into all the details, but I made sure that the place really stunk and was, and you can imagine how that gets pulled off. But in addition to that, a dead rat in a jar of water goes a long way also, and I had a couple of those hidden. So it smells like a toilet, smells like death, and yet I had people staying in my house trying to find stuff and just hanging out for 2 days. So during that time I had to sit and do nothing. I had to sit and, because you can't sit there and move around and creep. I basically did nothing for 2 days. It was the worst 2 days of my life. It was bad, but I didn't have to kill anybody, so it's okay. I haven't killed anybody. If I did, I wouldn't tell you, but so all that to say that at this point in time, when people come through, now we can tell them, look, if you want something to eat, you can see that house over there, see that front lawn over there, see those weeds over there. We know you can eat those. You can eat those. Help yourself and then get the hell out of here. And as far as people getting killed, that's why we don't have names. There's this little pie in the sky hope that eventually government will reassert itself down here. Well, ground zero is over in Los Angeles. This is one ring off of that. It's not going to happen. But if it does, plausible deniability. People know about stuff, but no names and no facts. I don't know anything. I mean, I don't know anything. People get down and dirty, and that's all behind us. Without my glasses, I can't see a damn thing without my glasses. Anyway, so you'll be seeing 3 of us real soon. Catch you later.